President Biden calling the surge in illegal immigrants at the border a crisis for the first time. This comes as a former director of national intelligence says rivals are testing Biden to see how strong the U.S. is. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says he can't make any guarantees that terrorist groups like ISIS won't rise up again once U.S. forces withdraw. This comes after Biden announced last week all U.S. troops are leaving Afghanistan by 9/11, ending the 20-year presence there. And Trump weighed in as well, saying there are two reasons why he thinks Biden's decision to use September 11th is a poor choice. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. We have some exciting news. We have another sponsor today, Shenyun Dancer. We'll get into that more later, including what the name is. But now, for the first time, President Biden called the border crisis a crisis. Over the weekend, Biden faced questions about his policy on refugee admissions. He said, "We are going to increase the number. The problem was that the refugee part was working on the crisis that ended up on the border with young people. We couldn't do two things at once, but now we are going to increase the number." On Friday, the White House released a memo saying it would keep Trump's 15,000 cap on refugees. But hours later, it reversed its decision. That's after progressive lawmakers criticized the move. Biden's decision to keep the 15,000 cap until May meeting with pushback. Top Democrats and refugee advocates calling it disappointing. Democrat Senator Dick Durbin called the limit unacceptable. The president of Refugees International said in a statement that Biden's decision to keep the refugee admissions is disappointing and that it makes both the Trump and Biden administrations jointly responsible for the lowest ceiling since the start of the U.S. refugee admissions program. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, meanwhile, defended Biden, saying on ABC over the weekend, "It is going to be very hard to meet the 62,000 this fiscal year." Now, as to the term crisis, there's been quite the back and forth on the language surrounding what's happening at the border. While Republicans have pressed Biden and the administration to use the term crisis, they have long held out. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki walking back comments when she accidentally referred to it as a crisis not long ago. And in the news, some outlets like the Associated Press have even told their reporters not to use the term crisis. So is it a crisis? Depends on who you ask. Many politicians have already called it that. As to the American people, an ABC News Ipsos poll found most Americans at 54% believe the situation with migrants and unaccompanied children showing up at the U.S.-Mexico border is currently a crisis. 42% characterize the situation as a serious problem, but not a crisis. And just 4% say it is not a serious problem. Now, as for the numbers, in March, U.S. Customs and Border stopped over 172,000 illegal migrants along the U.S.-Mexico border. President of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judge, called it the biggest surge that we've ever seen in the history of the Border Patrol. And head of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas recently acknowledged the U.S. is on pace to encounter more individuals on the southwest border than we have seen in the last 20 years. To deal with the surge in illegal immigrants, especially children, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, has opened another facility in Texas. Called Emergency Intake Sites, or EIS, this is the second to open in Central Texas at Joint Base San Antonio. This one can hold up to 372 boys aged 13 to 17 years old. According to HHS, these shelters provide necessities like sleeping quarters that are clean, meals, toiletries, and access to medical services. And to follow CDC guidelines, there's also COVID screening. According to Customs and Border, there's been a record high number of migrant children trying to cross over. In March alone, they intercepted almost 19,000 unaccompanied children. To deal with the surge, HHS opened 9 facilities in March alone. And Florida's Republican governor says Florida's lawsuit against Biden's immigration policies is trying to force him to follow the law. Governor DeSantis told Fox News you'll hear excuses for why they aren't enforcing immigration laws, like they are focusing on the most threats. He said before Biden, illegal immigrants who committed crimes would serve their sentences. Then ICE would send them back to their home countries. But now, because of Biden's immigration policy changes, DeSantis says ICE is effectively releasing them back into the United States. Now, before we turn to outside the U.S. and potential threats there, let's touch on today's sponsor. Ever find yourself looking for something comfortable yet chic? Look no further than Sinyun Dancer, which, by the way, is not from China. So what sets it apart? Every feature, including the fabric, color palette, style, and cut, bears the distinct aesthetic of Sinyun. That's a marked contrast from most trendy pieces today. Sinyun Dancer clothing provides you with a classy, distinguished, and timeless look that's great for everything from work and play. Visit sinyundancer.com today and save 10% off your first order with the code Tiffany10. Link will be down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as a reminder, we have been demonetized for 3 months. That means our ability to run ads or earn money on YouTube has been taken away. So we rely on sponsors like Sinyun Dancer or donations from you to keep getting this content out there.
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Sinyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
Now back to the news. Outside the U.S., Mexico's president said Sunday he might extend one of his key welfare programs to Central Americans to help curb immigration. The program aims to provide Mexicans with work and support the country's agriculture. But Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said within 3 years, it could create over 1 million jobs across Central America and Mexico. He said participants could earn a work visa for the United States after 3 years and eventually apply for U.S. citizenship after another 3 years. Lopez Obrador says he plans to propose the idea to Biden at the upcoming climate change summit. And now, speaking of borders, former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe says rivals are testing Biden to see how strong the U.S. is. Speaking to Fox News' Life, Liberty, and Levin, he raised concerns over the weekend, saying one of Joe Biden's closest friends, Robert Gates, who served as the Secretary of Defense with him in the Obama administration, said Joe Biden was wrong on every national security and foreign policy decision in the last 40 years. He notes foreign leaders, especially adversaries like Russia and China, are noticing and taking advantage of it. Ratcliffe says Russian President Vladimir Putin is an ex-KGB thug, and he is testing him, as in Biden, right now. And all of these world leaders are. Ratcliffe went on to call former President Donald Trump's foreign policy peace through strength, and Biden's approach chaos through weakness. He pointed to the southern border, saying, look at our own southern border, the border security issues, the immigration crisis. What now looks like it's going to be a crisis in the Middle East or Ukraine or in the straits outside of China. Ratcliffe says, adding, I fear that that is what our foreign policy is going to look like. And says, this is what happens when you don't put America first. Now, speaking of foreign policy, there are concerns about ISIS. Biden announced last week all U.S. troops are leaving Afghanistan by 9/11, ending the 20-year presence there. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan saying Sunday he can't make any guarantees that terrorist groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS won't rise up against once U.S. forces leave. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell called the move a bad idea last week, saying the U.S. was gift-wrapping the country for terrorists. Sullivan said on Fox News, I can't make any guarantees about what will happen inside the country. No one can. Adding all the United States could do is provide the Afghan security forces, the Afghan government, and the Afghan people resources and capabilities, training and equipping their forces, providing assistance to their government. He said it is time for American troops to come home and the Afghan people to step up to defend their own country. But Sullivan says even without U.S. military presence in the country, the Pentagon wouldn't be taking its eyes off the ball. He went on to say, "We have the capacity, from repositioning our capabilities over the horizon, to continue to suppress the terrorist threat in Afghanistan." And former President Trump also weighed in on the matter, saying on Sunday, "I wish Joe Biden wouldn't use September 11th as the date to withdraw our troops from Afghanistan for 2 reasons. So what are his 2 reasons? Trump says, first, we can and should get out earlier. 19 years is enough, in fact, far too much and way too long. He went on to say he made an early withdrawal possible by reducing U.S. military presence in Afghanistan from 16,000 troops to under 2,000. As for the second reason, Trump says, secondly, September 11th represents a very sad event and period for our country and should remain a day of reflection and remembrance, honoring those great souls we lost. He went on to say, getting out of Afghanistan is a wonderful and positive thing to do. I plan to withdraw on May 1st, and we should keep as close to that schedule as possible. Now, there's been mixed reactions among lawmakers and security experts. Recently confirmed Director of the CIA, William Burns, told lawmakers last week there is a significant risk once the U.S. military and the coalition militaries withdraw. He went on to say the U.S. government's ability to collect and act on threats will diminish. That's simply a fact. He warns that al-Qaeda and ISIS in Afghanistan remain intent on recovering the ability to attack U.S. targets, whether it's in the region, in the West, or ultimately in the homeland. Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen said she was very disappointed with the decision, writing on Twitter, "Although this decision was made in coordination with our allies, the U.S. has sacrificed too much to bring stability to Afghanistan to leave without verifiable assurances of a secure future." But others praised the move, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying over the weekend, "The terrorism threat has moved to other places, and we have other very important items on our agenda, including the relationship with China." That's a stance echoed by Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines. She told lawmakers last week of a more dispersed threat landscape, saying Afghanistan has been overshadowed by threats from countries such as China, which she called an unparalleled priority. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.